Welcome aboard the Go Chuck Yourself Jungle Safari, everyone. This week, we're going to go deep into the jungle, and we're going to see snakes and tigers and the scariest beast of them all, a jaded, thrice-divorced married couple. Hello, I am one of your tour guides, Chris Gillespie.
I'm Skipper Erin.
And we are here to remind you to keep all arms and legs inside the vehicle while we are in motion.
If you want to keep them. Aha.
That's right. We do have some hungry friends that we're going to be seeing along this ride. So if they, your arms might look pretty tasty, or maybe your legs, and they might just jump up and take it from you and have a nice little snack. So we ask that you keep all of your appendages inside the jungle vehicle. Erin, do you have any other safety warnings you'd like to give?
I feel like I would like to start making some like wisecracks and be like, you see that elephant over there? Looks like my ex-wife, or like something like that. But I don't know.
I'm gonna hold on to the microphone for right now, but maybe if Erin has any good ideas.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson, is that anything? Is he here? Jungle Cruise? Emily Blunt?
Well, he was gonna be here, but we had to postpone him due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So you'll probably be seeing him either next spring or next summer.
Maybe on Disney Plus, maybe on the streaming service of your choice.
Maybe they might just go straight to Disney Plus. Yeah. Maybe movie theaters won't exist in the future.
You know,
Who knows?
I did watch Artemis Fowl.
Yeah?
Just steamrolling us to a halt to let you know I did see it, and there is a scene where Josh Gad eats a bunch of dirt and it comes out his butt, and he like unhinges his jaw and he goes, "It's feeding time." And I just, like, you really needed to know that. Everyone really needs to know that.
So I'm making the executive decision that if our jungle vehicle gets stranded anywhere or stuck and we need to feed different people to the animals to pacify them, I nominate Erin.
Yeah, okay. That seems fair.
Great. So the name of this particular trek that we're going on is Chuck versus the Role Models. It is the 15th episode of season 3 of NBC's Chuck. And we're going to get lost in it. We're going to have a treasure map. Maybe we'll find treasure. We're going to see animals. We're going to kind of include this sub narrative about the why it's wrong to poach animals and the dangers of poaching and how unethical it is. But then we'll kind of stop doing that after a few years when we realize it's unnecessary. You're
doing like Disney Safari, and I'm doing like Disney Jungle Cruise. So that's why this is kind of weird, and like this is why I'm being kind of awkward, because we're not on the same page. We need to create a new ride, I think.
So it kind of sounds like we need to communicate better if our partnership is going to last the long haul. It sounds like it's all about communicating. Wow. We need to work out those issues.
Okay. So speaking of communicating, I'm going to communicate the plot of this episode. Sound good?
Yes. Let's get rolling on either I guess you can choose, listener, whether you want to picture this as like a very large whatever vehicle they use on the jungle safari ride, or if you want to picture it as a boat that is on a track in about half a foot of very chlorinated water.
Yeah, and either way, you can picture us both in like cargo khaki vests.
Yes, I'm sure we would look very good in those.
Yeah, I think so too. So this episode starts with something that I have learned is a reference to the show Heart to Heart, but Heart like HART, which seems to be a old spy caper show. One of the reviewers, I believe on IGN, commented that this would be making no sense at all to younger viewers, and I can confirm that he was correct.
Yep, I was like, I'm sure this is a reference to something that was around long before I was.
I have no idea why they did this, because it doesn't really relate to the rest of the episode at all, but it is fun. What's happening is Morgan is narrating in a sort of like noir type accent where he's like, "This is my pal Chuck and his girl Sarah." And it's like footage from the show, but it's also this like old fashioned thing where Chuck and Sarah are driving next to each other in convertibles on the PCH. And then Morgan is like, "This is where I come in." And then he's in the background on a very fake motorcycle. And it's kind of incredible. Like, I wish this had anything to do with the rest of the plot. My boyfriend commented like, "Oh, this episode must be about that guy and like his journey and how he fits into Chuck and Sarah's relationship." And it really wasn't at all. But what we do get to see is Morgan's bedroom when he wakes up. Apparently this was all a dream. And we get to see that he has Princess Leia sheets. Maybe they're like Princess Leia and the rest of the Star Wars characters, but all I saw was Princess Leia. And he also has a blanket that seems to be a panther. Did you notice this?
Yes, it was a I think it was a panther,
Okay.
sticking with the jungle theme
Yeah,
of
I guess
today's
it's
episode.
kind of foreshadowing, but yeah, it was just like a big panther blanket.
You know what's kind of unsettling, I guess, is the implication that Morgan now sleeps in Ellie and Devin's former bedroom.
Oh God. I hate that. I didn't even think about that.
I didn't think about it until just now, and it seems like they would be making a much bigger deal out of this particular move in the previous seasons. But now that Morgan is mature and somewhat less creepy, I guess they just don't talk about it.
So Morgan gets up out of bed and goes into the kitchen in the dark. Someone is at the fridge and he assumes it's Chuck because he lives with Chuck, and he starts to tell Chuck his dream. But then Sarah stands up. Apparently she's having a late night glass of orange juice, as we all do. She offers some to Morgan, and it's sufficiently awkward because she is yet again in a negligee. I'm wondering if she's run out of clothes at this point. She might have left them all in Paris because she left her hotel and they left their bags behind, so I don't know. She returns to her room, and Morgan says, "I hate you, Chuck." The next morning, Morgan complains about Chuck's constant sex and Morgan's lack thereof, and Chuck announces that he's planning to ask Sarah to move in with them. This is honestly kind of a dick move on his part. Like, I feel like him and Morgan should have, talked about this. I feel like he should have asked Morgan's thoughts. But Chuck is just like, yeah, this is what I'm doing. Deal with it, Morgan. Morgan goes silent, and I thought he was about to tell Chuck he was being a bad roommate, which would be well-deserved, but in fact it's just because Sarah is standing behind Chuck and has heard all of this. Chuck says, "How about it then?" And Sarah is like, "Why would we move in together? We're not a normal couple, blah, blah, blah." Chuck is hurt by this, but tries to understand. He's cut off when he realizes Sarah has been storing her guns under his couch somehow. I don't know when she did that or, how long they've been there. I don't know what's happening, but she has a bunch of guns under his couch. She tells him he'd better get used to this kind of thing if he wants to live with a spy.
Also, when she asks, why would we do that? A possible answer could be like, I don't know, Sarah, because you are basically homeless at this point. Because once again, she's moved out of her hotel room / apartment that she was in, up to this point. And is she just staying at Castle? She's obviously just staying with Chuck, but it seems like she's going to go out and find her own place, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. Logistically, it makes sense for her to move in there, but she's a little dubious about it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is followed by a scene that I'm not really sure how tasteful and accurate it is, but it is Devin and Ellie arriving at a new town in Africa. It's pouring rain and surrounded by men with guns, and Ellie is alarmed by this, pretty understandably. She tells Devin that she's not sure what they got themselves into, but he says they're making a difference and offers to cook her dinner that night, and that appeases her for now. Back in Castle, Beckman tells Chuck and Sarah that their next assignment is to observe two other famous CIA agents, Craig and Laura Turner. Beckman apparently wants Chuck and Sarah to see how these agents operate because they've been married for 30 years, and she wants Chuck and Sarah to learn how to go about it properly. Also, Beckman wants Casey to train Morgan. Chuck is really amused by this, and we can tell that Beckman is too, and she's kind of... I'm on the fence about her still, but in this episode, she's a little bit sassy, and I kind of like it.
Just the right level of sassiness?
Yeah. Not like, she's not putting anybody out, but she's just making her little cracks. I like that side of Beckman.
Mm-hmm.
Later at Chuck's apartment, he's bustling around getting ready, and Sarah yells at him for making her nervous, which seems a little rude. First of all, she has decided not to move in, so she is a guest in his house. And I feel like she's just being a little cagey this episode. I wasn't really into what she was doing, but I assume she's dealing with her own stuff. Chuck expresses his own nervousness about the couple being impressed by him and Sarah as we see two figures walking through the courtyard. There's a particularly beautiful shot. We don't usually get this type of shot, but we see the full complex and how it's multiple levels, and it looks really, really pretty. But then the woman, whose name is Laura Turner, comments, "What a dump."
No one on Chuck has ever commented or has ever said anything about Chuck's apartment this.
Really one way or the other. Nobody said it's beautiful and no one said it sucks.
I feel like it's objectively very nice looking.
Yes, I agree. It has a courtyard and a fountain. That's nice.
But I guess this is a move of, this is characterization, I suppose, of these characters. This is how they feel about things.
Yeah. Chuck and Sarah open the door, and Craig says, "Dear God, it's us 30 years ago." And Chuck says, "Look, Sarah, it's us in 30 years. I want to note here that the Turners are played by Fred Willard, who I was excited to see, and Swoosie Kurtz. So that's who they are. If you haven't watched this episode and you want to picture the correct people, that's who you should be picturing. After the credits, Chuck and Sarah have a kind of awkward get-together with Craig and Laura, at which point I was thinking, do you think that the names Craig and Laura are kind of supposed to be like Chuck and Sarah? Because it's like a one-syllable C name, and then like something that's like Laura, Sarah, they're kind of like two-syllable names ending in You think that's on purpose?
I think that's a good point. I guess they are somewhat similar, with like Craig and Chuck kind of being parallel.
Yeah.
But it seems that Laura and Sarah, I guess Laura and Sarah are kind of like half rhymes, sort of.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe the names are also mirroring Chuck and Sarah.
It's kind of like when I was in high school and I wanted to write like a Romeo and Juliet kind of story, but like set in a high school. And I was like, okay, like the Romeo character is going to be named Roman and the Juliet is going to be named Julie. And so it's kind of like that, you know?
Whoa, you just blew my mind.
I know, right?
Oh man, you're a genius, Erin.
Thank you. I'll coming to bookstores near you at in like 40 years, I guess.
Roman and Julie.
Finally,
a fresh take on Romeo and Juliet. We haven't had any of those ever.
No. So Laura is a little hostile towards Craig, and they reveal that they have been divorced and remarried 3 times. When Craig and Laura get up to leave, they tell Chuck and Sarah that their mission will be that night at another party held by someone, I don't know, some guy named Otto. He has like something that he's like selling, I don't know, whatever. It's the normal thing. Chris is mad, I can tell.
Just doesn't make sense. Why do these people always have parties when they have things that they're trying to sell or like transfer?
They should be aware that like it never works, because there's been 3 years where like Chuck and his team have always thwarted this. So like, at least in the LA area, don't do it.
Here's a concept. Why don't you throw the party after you successfully sell the thing that you're trying to get rid of?
Good plan.
And you can celebrate and relax with your newfound earnings instead of being like, well, I have this thing that I would really hate for someone to steal. It's just upstairs. But yeah, a bunch of strangers come on into my home.
Perfect. Chuck says he can't wait to see the Turners in action, and Sarah looks at him a little dubiously. At the Buy-More, Morgan has no chill about his newfound spy life. Casey says that Morgan, being as he is a liability to the team, and Morgan is very excited when Casey says he's going to train him. Instead of taking him to Langley, as Morgan expects, Casey says he's going to teach Morgan everything he knows in the store. We cut to the party, where Craig and Laura tell Chuck and Sarah to avoid the bad guy Otto and his guards. As Chuck and Sarah are observing, though, Otto sees them and makes a beeline right for them. I don't really know what's going on here. I guess he notices that there's someone that he didn't invite or like something, or maybe he's attracted to Sarah. That's kind of the direction I thought they were going to go in. But before Otto can get there, Craig and Laura step in and engage him in a conversation. Chuck is impressed, but Sarah says the Turners are not all that great. Chuck tries to kiss her, and she's like, "You're not going to ask me to move in with you again, are you?" And I don't know what the deal with her is in this episode. She's just kind of hostile. Here's what makes me so anxious about the next scene. It's dark and like party time up in Chuck and Sarah's life, but we cut back to Morgan and Casey and they're still at the Buy-More. Like, what shift are they working? What time do you think it is? Because it's like, I mean, maybe it's winter and it gets dark earlier, but like, it's making me nervous that like Chuck and Sarah are off at a party. Like, parties usually start like 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. and like, the Buy-More's still hopping at this point. Like, it's full of customers.
That's fine.
Think? No, it's not okay.
I'm not perturbed by this at all. The Buy-More's probably closes at like 9:30 or 10.
Well, what time do you think they're at the party?
Like 8?
Okay. I mean, I guess if it works out that way, it's fine. But I was just very nervous that they were working like way too late hours. As Morgan's first lesson, Casey points out a beautiful young woman looking at either some printer cartridges or the massive Fable 2 display that they still have set up behind her.
Check it out.
Fable 2, sponsors of Go Chuck Yourself. Casey tells Morgan to go get the woman's phone number. Morgan reluctantly goes over, and it seems to be going well, but when Morgan comes back and hands Casey the phone number on his business card, instead of her number, the woman has written, "You disgust me." I really wish that she had written "You disgust me" with a smiley face. Like, I just feel like the smiley face would have been a nice touch, but I think she just wrote "You disgust me."
They got me. I was surprised. I was like, wow, was Morgan really that successful in getting the phone number that easily?
Yeah. I wonder what he said. We'll never know. Back at the party, Chuck and Sarah catch Laura drinking heavily. She points out that Craig is flirting heavily with a younger woman and left his mic on, so they all hear him asking the woman to come back to his hotel room later that night. A drunk Laura says she's off to steal Otto's software, but then she trips and falls. Craig comes over to help her, but then he throws out his back. Chuck and Sarah are alarmed and say they better all get out of there before their covers are blown, so they sneak away while Craig and Laura are hanging out on the ground. and Chuck and Sarah agree to go steal the software themselves.
Chuck and Sarah head upstairs to Otto's master suite. Sarah immediately looks for a safe while Chuck starts sneezing, and he announces that there must be a cat around because his allergies are acting up.
Yeah, something we've always known about Chuck is that he's allergic to cats.
He loves the Eiffel Tower, and he has a severe cat allergy. At this moment, Chuck finds a leather whip on the bed and comments that Otto must have, used that whip for certain sexual deeds, I guess. And he's just kind of like, that's cool, whatever. But then Chuck plays around with the whip and is like cracking it. And then Sarah looks up at him and very gravely says, "Chuck, put the whip down." And Chuck doesn't understand why until he turns around and sees a tiger emerging from the other room.
There's not enough animal capers in Chuck. I never really thought about that before, but like seeing one now, I was very excited.
Yes, I felt the same way. The tiger is not too pleased by seeing Chuck and Sarah and begins to growl. And so the tiger, we find out her name later is Sasha, so I'll just refer to the tiger as Sasha.
Yes.
Sasha is not too pleased by seeing Chuck and Sarah and begins to growl and lick her lips while she hops onto Otto's bed.
She's so cute.
We see that she is wearing a diamond-studded collar, which Chuck flashes on. And yes, as it turns out, the software that they are looking to steal is embedded into Sasha's collar. Sarah grabs Chuck and they run into a walk-in closet, and Chuck tells her about the collar. They prop up a chair to block the door shut, and Chuck says that they need to think like the Turners, but Sasha starts to claw through the door. So at this moment, Sarah goes all Joe Exotic and takes out a handgun, presumably to shoot the tiger.
Oh my god, it was so upsetting.
Chuck then articulates something that nobody at Joe Exotic Zoo ever said, which was, "No, you cannot shoot that tiger." He explains that they're endangered and majestic. Sarah asks if he has any better ideas, and he kind of struggles to think of anything else as Sasha rips through the door like tissue paper. Back at the Bymore, there are notably fewer jungle cats.
Mm-hmm.
Casey tells Morgan that he needs to prove his stealthiness by stealing something from the Bymore. Morgan says no problem and steals what looks like a baby bottle pop from the candy shelf, but Casey punches him and tells him that he has something a bit more difficult in mind. I need to preface this next part by saying that me quoting what I'm about to quote is not an endorsement of its author or any of his despicable life actions. Trapped in the closet, Sarah and Chuck bicker about whether or not the Turners are positive role models. Chuck says that there are worse people for them to turn into, but Sarah says that she'd rather be eaten by a tiger, which, luckily for her, seems like a strong possibility at this point. As they quiet down, Chuck and Sarah realize that Sasha is no longer clawing at the door. In fact, Chuck says that the sound that the tiger is making sounds a lot like, cut to Big Mike sound asleep in his office.
I was so excited to see him.
Morgan opens the door as Casey watches from the window. We hear a voiceover of Casey telling Morgan, "Your mission is to steal Big Mike's keycard."
I feel like we didn't need the voiceover. I feel like we could have just inferred what was happening.
Well, I felt the same way. I kind of felt about the voiceover the way that I felt about the appearance of the tiger I was like, yeah, Chuck doesn't really use a lot of voiceover.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like they don't use a lot of animal hijinks.
Mm-hmm. I observed in the scene, I thought that there was a picture of Big Mike and Bologna with lightsabers. So I thought that was kind of cool. But then, in fact, it's a picture of them with fishing poles, which is maybe more cool. Like he's imparted his love of fishing onto his significant other, and that's nice. They're sharing hobbies. Yeah,
we don't hear about her much anymore, but it seems like they must be doing well.
Yeah.
Yes. Sasha is indeed asleep on the bed, and Chuck and Sarah exit the closet.
She's very obviously awake. I don't think you can make a tiger pretend to be asleep. There's some shots where you can see that her eyes are open, but she's supposed to be asleep. We'll say.
So Chuck comments that the tiger is as asleep as Big Mike after he eats a baker's dozen of donuts, and then he and Sarah bicker about who's going to approach the tiger until Sarah says, "Just do it." And now we have intercut shots that mirror each other of Chuck approaching Sasha and Morgan approaching Big Mike. Chuck's situation is a little bit more difficult because he has to suppress his allergies, which get worse and worse as he gets closer to the tiger. And I wanted to ask you, Erin, would you rather steal something from a sleeping Big Mike or a sleeping tiger?
I'd really like to be in the room with the tiger because I think it's pretty sweet. But I feel like Big Mike is objectively Big Mike probably won't kill me. He might get mad at me, which considering my anxiety, that might be worse than being killed. But I don't know. I guess I'm just gonna go with Big Mike.
Okay,
that's my logic.
That was a kind of a roundabout way to get to the obvious answer of that question. I appreciate that.
I was really concerned, like, as I'm saying about the tiger, like, being obviously awake, it's breathing very fast. Like, I paused it and made my boyfriend watch it again because it's, like, it's breathing very fast. And I was worried if this, like, I Googled it, but I couldn't seem to find how fast tigers typically breathe. So I was worried that the tiger, like, as an actor, was stressed out about having Zachary Levi, creeping so close to him. Also, Zachary Levi is actually allergic to cats. So I don't know if this scene was hard for him because, like, he's in a room with a cat, which he's allergic to.
Okay, so you were very critical of the tiger and the way that they present the tiger. It's supposed to be asleep, but you're saying it's awake and all of that. But it was clear to me that Zachary Levi and the tiger were never in the same room at the same time. Was that not evident to you?
No?
It seems to me that they, like, superimposed Zachary Levi onto the shots of the tiger.
Okay.
And then the way that they edit it, you never actually see him certainly with a tiger.
Okay, well, that's fine. That's fine. So I guess the tiger was not stressed out by Zachary Levi, but what about the camera people that were filming him or her?
Yeah, maybe.
He was stressed out.
That's
Poor
valid.
tiger.
Maybe you have a career in, like, animals' rights in the entertainment industry.
PETA, give me a call. PETA, sponsors of Go Chuck Yourself.
So both of our heroes seem to succeed in their missions. Morgan rips the name badge off of Big Mike while Chuck gingerly removes the tiger's collar. All seems to be well until Chuck sneezes and wakes up Sasha. Sarah and Chuck run out of the room, locking the door behind them. And Chuck, like the emotionally unstable independent Zune owner that he is, says, "Why didn't you shoot it?" And Sarah says that it was too majestic to shoot. Morgan is equally as unlucky as Big Mike wakes up to see Morgan standing on his desk watching him. Big Mike says, "Grimes, I told you I don't like people looking at me when I'm sleeping."
I loved that.
And Morgan apologizes and explains that he took the name card because he thought it was constricting Big Mike's windpipe.
So he was concerned, like I was concerned about the tiger's breathing. Morgan was concerned about Big Mike's breathing.
Big Mike says that he's a grown man who can take care of himself, but Morgan can get him another donut. Casey shakes his head in disappointment. Here's a phrase that we've never said before here on Go Check Yourself. Back in the Congo, Ellie and Devin are having their dinner date. Ellie says that she feels guilty from complaining even when surrounded by people way less fortunate than her. Devin says that she's allowed to feel it the way that she feels, and Ellie admits that she's having a hard time adjusting. As she says this, Devin sees a snake emerge from the woods behind Ellie. Ellie sees Devin get concerned and becomes concerned herself, and Devin takes out a knife from his bag. As he's about to stab the snake, another man appears out of nowhere and hits the snake with a machete. The man introduces himself as Justin, the camp security coordinator, and advises Ellie and Devin to stick closer to the main campsite at nighttime because of the animals. He apologizes for not welcoming them earlier, but says that he is very appreciative and excited to have them. Ellie and Devin try to play it cool, but are clearly shaken up by the snake incident. Devin asks, "Are you all right?" And then immediately says, "We're all right," as he swats a mosquito on his neck.
I commented here, Devin's going to get malaria. Little did I know.
Back in LA, Chuck and Sarah exit the mansion and discuss calling the Turners from the car. As they say this, the Turners step out from around a corner and hold Chuck and Sarah up at gunpoint. Mr. Turner says that they're teaching them that ever-perennial lesson about spy work. No, not spies don't fall in love, but trust no one.
Yeah, we've heard that before, of course.
Mr. Turner takes the collar from Chuck with a smile as Chuck struggles to believe that this is actually happening. Later at Castle, Chuck, Sarah, and Casey talk to Beckman about the Turners going rogue. Beckman also doesn't believe it and asserts that the Turners are some of the most tenured spies out there and that they must have had a good reason for doing what they did. She assigns Chuck and Sarah to go find them. Casey offers to join them, but Beckman tells him that he needs to continue training Morgan. Chuck asks how that's going, and Casey says that Morgan makes Chuck look like a natural-born operative. Beckman then decides that she's going to send both Casey and Morgan to boot camp. It's not often that we have an intermission in the middle of an episode to reset both the A plot and the B plot in such a similar way to the beginning of the episode, because the episode started with them in the first act. They had a scene in Castle where they were getting their assignments, and now we're back in Castle, and they're like, "Okay, let's check up on your assignments so far. All right, here's what you need to do moving forward." And I was like, okay, this is kind of odd, but I'll go with it. Also, at this moment, as I was taking this pause to think, I was thinking, don't you think it's kind of weird that Beckman is a general? So that means that she's pretty high up in, like, the armed forces rank of command.
Uh-huh.
Like, why is she? Don't you think she would outsource a lot of the this minor like HR onboarding stuff for Morgan to another team member? Doesn't she have bigger fish to fry?
That's a good point, actually. I think Beckman is very invested in Team Bartowski. Like, she kind of puts on a hard front and she's stern with them, but I think that she really cares about them. So maybe she's supposed to do the onboarding, like pass it on somewhere lower on the chain, but she just really wants to, you know?
She's just a hands-on boss.
Yeah. I bet she doesn't, well, we've seen her office, so we know this isn't true, but I feel like she's one of the bosses that, like, doesn't have a door. Like, she's just like, my door's always open because I don't have one. Just come on in.
Back at Chuck's apartment, Chuck rants to Sarah about his frustration with the Turners. Not only did they betray them, but they also made them look like fools to Beckman. Chuck starts to clean the dishes, and Sarah asks why he's doing that, to which Chuck responds that Bartowski's clean when they're stressed, which
something
is a
we also know. Yeah, I mean, Ellie does that. This. Yeah.
Yeah. He continues to vent that the Turners were supposed to be their role models, but they ended up being cold, callous jerks. Chuck says that he's concerned that Sarah will never move in with him now, that he's seen what happens when people are in relationships for a long time. To which Sarah says that they are not the Turners and that they need to focus on finding the Turners. Chuck contends that they won't be able to find such seasoned spies until Chuck comes across Mr. Turner's empty martini glass with the inadequate cherry. I don't know if we mentioned this before,
we didn't.
But they had drinks when they were first meeting, and Chuck had made Mr. Turner a Manhattan, and Mr. Turner, Craig, felt like the cherry that was in the Manhattan was not adequate enough for the proper Manhattan, and that they told them that there was only one hotel in Los Angeles that had the proper kind of cherries, and that's called the Grand Ambassador. So
thank you for covering my ass, Chris.
That's what safari tour guide partners do. We got to look out for each other. Chuck says that Sarah can't be sure that they're there, but Sarah don't give a shit and is already taking out her gun. She cocks it and says, "This is how I deal with stress," and walks away. So badass.
That's a moment for women. We're strong.
We return to the Congo to see Ellie stepping out of a tent and taking out a satellite phone. She calls Chuck but gets his voicemail. She proceeds to vent to Chuck about how much she's struggling in the jungle and how she can't really talk to Devin about it because he seems to be thriving and all the villagers love him. She gets a little emotional and then hangs up. Our new friend Justin sees this and approaches her and tells her that if she ever needs to talk, she can talk to him, but Ellie insists that she's fine before relenting and admitting that she's not fine. She tells Justin about growing up with Chuck. Apparently they used to go camping in the backyard and Chuck would fall asleep in the tent, but then Ellie would go back inside and sleep and then set an alarm to make sure that she went back outside to the tent before Chuck woke up.
That's sweet.
She asserts that she's just not built for like living out in the outdoors and in this jungle and a really, taxing, stressful situation. But Justin says that she is built for being a doctor there. It just takes some getting used to. So at the Grand Ambassador Hotel, actually, no, hold on. So Chuck is ignoring, because Ellie alludes to leaving Chuck a lot of different voicemails. This week's episode for Chuck is not that stressful. Obviously, it's like the baseline stress for what Chuck is doing, but he knows that Ellie is in Africa and he's been ignoring her phone calls and not returning them.
That is what we are led to believe. I think that, like, maybe if we do some of the mental legwork, we can pretend that they're like playing phone tag, that they haven't gotten used to the time difference and he keeps calling her when she's asleep and vice versa. But from the information that we receive, yes, that is what seems like it's happening.
So at the Grand Ambassador Hotel, the Turners are hanging out in their suite discussing how they're going to sell the collar and its software. They muse about always having done the right thing for 30 years, but now they're going to get their reward as jaded old people. Mrs. Turner says that she feels bad about disappointing Chuck and Sarah, but Mr. Turner contends that Chuck and Sarah can never cut it as real spies because they are actually in love. Mrs. Turner questions if Mr. Turner still loves her, and Mr. Turner says that their love is different. It's aged to perfection. Mrs. Turner then calls him out for hitting on that younger woman back at Otto's party, and Mr. Turner says that he was just causing a diversion, but Mrs. Turner does not believe him. The two squabble until room service knocks on their door. Mr. Turner opens the door to find a tray with a single Manhattan on it with a card that says "Compliments of the Bartowskis," which is, I hope as a professional copy editor, Erin, you were shook by this card.
I actually did not look at it very closely. Was it misspelled?
It was "Compliments of the Bartowskis," so it would singular Bartowski '*S.
That's too bad. That's a shame.
Shook my head. I was disappointed.
When I am not working, I turn off that part of my brain. So
that's fair enough. I understand. Once again, I have your back.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So as Mr. Turner is examining this, Chuck sneaks into the hotel suite through the window because there's nothing Chuck loves more than sneaking into hotel rooms from their windows or balconies. Chuck is in the hotel room. Mr. Turner comes back into the hotel room confused, only to see Chuck and Sarah's holding both her gun as well as Mrs. Turner's gun. Mr. Turner puts his hands up and asks how they found them, and Sarah says that they were the only room that ordered 12 Manhattans.
That's a lot. Do you think that they were sharing them, or do you think that he just had 12 himself?
Maybe they were sharing them, but also if he's been drinking them for 30 years, his tolerance is probably pretty high.
I mean, that's true, but like 12 is a lot. That's double digits.
Wow, who's counting, Erin? Fun police over here.
Okay.
Back in Castle, Casey has Morgan in Castle's shooting range. Morgan seems to know his way around a handgun, which is kind of surprising. Morgan explains that his knowledge of guns is all from video games, and Casey reminds him that this is real life and it's not a video game. Morgan points the laser focus on the target and then pulls the trigger and immediately throws the gun in the air, which I thought was a nice touch because it's very loud, and I've never shot a gun before, but I imagine if you were not used to it, it's probably, you would also throw the gun in the air.
Are you asking me if I think that I would throw a gun in there?
It wasn't the specific you. It was more of the general.
No, I agree.
Like,
well, my small story about this is like when I pretend I'm shooting something as I do often, I'll put I guess this is a visual medium so you can't see, but there is a it hurts when you shoot a gun. I have not ever shot a gun, but I've shot a paintball gun, and it bounces back, it hits you, and I feel like that would be alarming if you weren't expecting it. Like if you only played Duck Hunt, that gun doesn't really do that. You just pull the trigger and that's it. But I feel like I don't know if everyone would throw it into the air, but I think you'd be alarmed. I think your arm would hurt, and you might let go of it. I liked it.
We are, of course, talking about the recoil. I guess there's the word for this term. Yes. And if that was not clear from what Erin was just saying, Erin apparently does recoil when she does finger guns.
Yes.
You really commit to a level of realism with your finger guns.
Yes, that is what I was trying to say. Thank you. Thank you again.
So anyhow, they're having this little awkward moment with the guns. Casey catches the gun after Morgan throws it, and he immediately tells Morgan to sit down. Morgan is concerned that Casey's going to fire him and alludes to feeling worse than when he got fired from Underpants, etc.
I love that detail.
There's a detail that we did not know about Morgan's career, that he used to work across the plaza from the Buy More at Underpants, etc. And he was fired, so he had to get a job at the Buy More.
Yeah. There's a rich Morgan Grimes backstory.
It's so rich that they really should explore it in a spin-off of just called Morgan and go make it a prequel to Chuck about Morgan working in Underpants, etc. This is a terrible idea. No one should do this. Casey tells Morgan that it's not the end of the world, but Morgan says that all that he ever wanted was to be a part of the team, and now he blew it. Casey reminds Morgan that Morgan was there for him when the CIA fired him, and now he's there for Morgan. And this is kind of like an unexpectedly sweet moment. Morgan tries to hug Casey, but then Casey pushes him away. As this is happening, Chuck and Sarah bring the Turners back to Chuck's apartment, handcuffed. Sarah holds them accountable, but the Turners bicker about whose idea it was to steal the software and who should be held responsible. The bickering pushes Chuck to his boiling point, and he yells at them and says that it's one thing to betray the CIA, but it's another thing to betray your partner. Chuck reminds them that the Turners were there to teach he and Sarah how to be a great spy couple, and that Chuck looked up to them. Mrs. Turner seems to be touched by this, but Mr. Turner tells Chuck to check back with him in 30 years. He says that the CIA has a way of breaking young idealists, especially if they're in love.
Sarah and Chuck look at each other, but before they can really process this, there's a knock on the door. Sarah thinks it might be the marshals that are there to pick up the Turners, but Chuck looks through the window and sees that it's Otto and Sasha. There's a pretty adorable shot of the tiger looking through the peephole. Then Chuck rushes to the couch cache of weapons to take out a gun. Unfortunately for him, Sarah emptied it out at Chuck's request, so they're weaponless. I'm kind of confused about this because they've kidnapped the Turners and tied them up at the kitchen table, and they've done this without a gun. Like, the Turners are just, listening to them? I don't know. I feel like Sarah should at least have had a gun, but apparently she left it in the car. I don't know. I feel like it's just not that smart.
Well, Sarah had the two guns from the hotel room.
So did she leave them in the car? Where did she put them?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, so I don't know what's happening here, but they don't have any guns. Thinking fast, Sarah locks the Turners in the bathroom, and Chuck goes to open the door. Otto and his tiger immediately rush in. This is where we find out the tiger's name is Sasha. Her handler leads her through the house where I don't really know what's happening here, because my assumption initially was that she was like kind of like hunting, like sniffing for the Turners to find them. But when I was researching how fast tigers breathe, I learned that they don't use their sense of smell when they're hunting. So maybe that's why it just takes her a conveniently long time to find the Turners in the bathroom. I don't know.
Was she looking for the Turners, or was she just looking for the collar?
Just looking
that the
around.
Turners still had.
I mean, that's fair. I don't either one. She's looking for something.
She's on the prowl.
Meanwhile, Chuck and Sarah pretend that they crashed Otto's party for non-spy related reasons, but he supposes that Chuck's apartment is a CIA safe house and Chuck and Sarah are not actually a real couple. He puts a gun to Chuck's head and tells them all he asks is for them to hand over the Turners. It's not really clear if he's like gonna also let them go, but basically how he says all I ask, it kind of seems like they can sell out the Turners and then they'll be okay. Chuck pulls Sarah aside and suggests they do it because even if it makes them no better than the Turners, that might be where they're headed anyway. Sarah asks if he really believes that, and he says no, so they tell Otto they can't help him, which is stupid because, again, Otto literally has a gun pointed right in Chuck's face. Like, he could blow Chuck away for this, but he doesn't. Sasha discovers the bathroom door that she literally walked past to get further down the hall before. Like, this is, again, like, Tiger's sense of smell. She just, like, didn't, I don't know, like, she didn't notice that there were people in there. She didn't, like, smell her collar. I don't know. Sasha, come on. Otto goes to investigate. Unfortunately, when they open the bathroom door, they find out that the Turners have escaped out the window. Sarah and Chuck are upset to learn that the Turners have once again left them with the bag, but Otto and his men aren't all that moved. Then the Turners burst in through Chuck's back door with their guns drawn and point them at Otto to prove they're not traitors. Yay, that's nice, you know? It's fine. Meanwhile, Casey and Morgan are returning to the complex from work, and they find the tiger's handler knocked out and Sasha on the loose. They hide behind some bushes. There's another intercut scene as Morgan says that the world needs men like Casey, but doesn't need men like Morgan, so he's going to sacrifice himself by leading the tiger into Ellie and Devin's empty apartment. He runs in and the tiger runs after him, and instead of then, like, jumping out and shutting the door, Morgan just locks himself in there too. This is cut with Chuck flashing and fighting the bad guys, then him and Sarah drawing their guns on the Turners. Also, I should note that Cobra Style is playing, and it's been used a lot in this, like, latter half of this season.
Was it really?
Yeah. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't think it...
You didn't notice Cobra Style?
I didn't.
Maybe I'm confusing something else with Cobra Style, but it's, you know, maybe it wasn't.
Oh, I'll have to go back and check. I thought that would have stood out to me, but maybe it just didn't.
I could have been completely wrong. It could have been like some other like Chuck like fight song that I just think is Cobra Style, and I haven't really remembered what Cobra Style is. But I thought it was Cobra Style. Maybe it's not. Okay. I could be wrong.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, please do. Foremost Cobra Style expert Chris Gillespie is on the case. Morgan jumps out a second-story window that actually isn't all that high because it's above stairs, and Casey catches him. Apparently, tigers can also jump because Sasha stays inside Ellie and Devin's apartment, and everyone is safe. Are you looking to see if Cobra Style is in the episode?
According to Wikipedia, which I think does a pretty good job of tracking all of the songs that are used in any given episode, Cobra Style is not mentioned at
shit. All. Okay. How does Cobra Style go again? That's the one that's like bong, big, big, bong, big, bong, big, bong. That's Cobra Style? I thought Cobra Style was in this episode. Maybe it's not hard to... I mean, they probably had some kind of stock song that basically has probably what it was. The same vibe as Cobra Style. I'm ashamed. I'm sorry. Yeah, to all of our listeners, this is a great betrayal. All the more reason that we're excited to feed you to the alligators, if need be. Yeah. If our safari even if not need be, you could just do it anyway. I deserve it. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so we'll do that at the end because I've got a little bit left to say. Once the bad guys are out of commission, the Wachowskis and the Turners face off. Sarah and Laura refuse to put down their guns, but the men do. Chuck says that he can't let the Turners go, and Otto agrees that it's over. Back in Castle, Beckman congratulates all four of them on their mission, then moves on to the Turners' actions. So, I was wondering, like, Sarah thought that earlier, like, marshals were going to show up and, like, take the Turners away. So did they just not? Like, what happened here? Why are they all back at Castle? They called off the marshals because I guess the Turners are forgiven for helping save Chuck and Sarah. Yep, that seems okay. Chuck is about to make an appeal on their behalf, but then Sarah speaks up for them entirely, saying that their double cross was actually a triple cross to trap Otto. Beckman doesn't even question this. She's about to give the Turners their next assignment in front of Chuck and Sarah, apparently, when also in front of Chuck and Sarah, the Turners just make their retirement announcement. And it's like effective immediately. They're not giving 2 weeks notice. They're like, we're gone. Beckman says, who will possibly take your place? And they point to Chuck and Sarah. The next time we cut to the TV, Beckman's not on it anymore, so I guess she got, like, really pissed and just left without saying goodbye.
And then the Turners just kind of walk off into Castle, never to be seen again.
Yeah, they're still in there.
Not even up through the door into the orange. They just go, like, into the depths of Castle.
Yeah, that's where you go. Like, it's like being put out to pasture, but it's put into Castle. The next scene is back in Africa, where Ellie seems to be a little bit reinvigorated after her talk with Justin. We get approximately none of that, though, and move right back to the Bymore, where Casey tells Morgan he passed his test. Morgan is like, but I failed every test. But the tiger part was, I guess, the most important. Casey says that Morgan has balls. We then cut to Ellie and Devin's destroyed apartment, which Chuck says he, Morgan, and Sarah have to fix before Ellie and Devin get back. Sarah says, I thought I'd start with our place, and agrees to move in with Chuck. That's nice. She tells him she's sorry for freaking out earlier, it's just that she's never learned how to have a normal life. Chuck says they'll never be normal, and she says it'll just be nice to have something once their spy life is over. Back in Africa again, Ellie goes into her tent and finds Devin suffering from what seems like malaria. So I was kind of right about, he got bit by a mosquito. So everyone's friend Justin helps her bring him to a truck to transport them to the airport to get help. But once Ellie is gone, Justin pulls out a ring phone and says that he poisoned Devin, made it look like malaria, and Ellie doesn't suspect a thing. Oh no!
So first of all, that I did not see that coming. That blew my mind. I did not see that at all. I was not prepared to see a ring agent, let alone one that is trying to be predatory towards Awesome and Ellie. But also, I was very confused because they say that Devin is sick and they think he has malaria, and they load him onto a truck to take him to the airport. I was like, shouldn't they take him to a hospital somewhere? Well, Chris,
I do have some insight into this. On Wikipedia, there is a note that says that malaria is very common in the Congo, and that actually the safest course of action would be to bring Devin to a hospital in the Congo because the Congo has more resources to deal with it. So it would be counterproductive to bring him back to the United States. But I guess that's what they're doing.
It'd be like, wouldn't he just continue to be sick? Like, if he's flying from like Africa to the United States, I mean, it would even make more sense if it was like an emergency. Would they have to fly him to like Europe or something?
Yeah.
But I was like, he could potentially just continue to get more and more sick while he's on a 20-hour flight or whatever.
Yes. I have to assume that, like, if the season had ended where it was supposed to, it would have been just like, Devin and Ellie were in Africa for the whole, like, summer, and then they came back. But because we have these extra 6 episodes, they have to bring them back to Burbank so they don't have to keep showing them in Africa. But what I thought was going to happen was that there was going to be some kind of, like, not like an infidelity plotline, but that Justin was going to be, like, another player for Ellie's heart. Like, because I remembered not liking him. But this is why, I guess. He's bad. He's a ring agent.
Yeah, they kind of make it seem like, oh, Ellie's going to have... like,
she's tempted.
Yeah. She's tempted, yeah. So that is our journey into the heart of Chuck versus the role models.
That is it. Are you surprised that I haven't made a role models reference?
Yep, I am.
I could not remember who the second actor. I remember Paul Rudd is in it, but I could not remember the other guy, so that's why I have not done it.
I did think that it was going to happen immediately at the top of the episode. You were going to refer to that.
I gotta keep you on your toes.
You really surprised me with bringing that up at the end. So what a wild ride. And just as Devin and Ellie are leaving Africa and I guess quitting Doctors Without Borders because Devin got sick once, that was what was on to me too.
I'm like, thing. If they were like really doing Doctors Without Borders, like there are so many like shots and things that they will make you get if you are going abroad, like let alone to Africa. So like, I mean, we know that Devin didn't really get malaria. Like what he really got was like poisoned, but it's like unlikely that like I feel like they would have like been vaccinated for like so many things that like I feel like they could have questioned it a little bit more, like why Devin got malaria, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So that concludes our jungle tour, and now we are going to pull up to our base camp for the evening and sit around the fire and talk about our thoughts about said jungle tour, what we saw, how we felt, our hopes, our fears, our concerns, what surprised us. And by that, I mean Chuck, Marry, Kill, where we talk about one part of this episode that we would like to marry, and maybe divorce it 3 times and then remarry it twice more.
Mm-hmm.
And then one part of this episode that we'd like to kill, maybe using some kind of fake malaria poison drug thing.
Yes.
All of this is to say that there's one element of the show or the episode that we liked, and one element of this episode that we did not like.
So my Mary is, I feel it's obvious, but my Mary would be Sasha. She was a very good girl, and it was nice to see her.
Well, my Mary was also Sasha, so it seems that we are entering into a 3-way marriage with a tiger.
Yes. A 3-way bi-species relationship.
Which is using 2 different elements of Tiger King in a way that they have not been crossed over before. Last time, I don't know if I know you just know about these things, but you had said that you weren't going to watch Tiger King.
No, I have not watched it.
That's fine. I respect that. But there's both a lot of tigers and also a 3-way marriage. So that's what we're doing.
We're the Tiger King 2 is what Go Chuck Yourself has become.
Tiger King 2, Go Chuck Yourself. Well, because I thought that, like, I think if you look at the surface, that when you think of having a tiger in an episode of Chuck, you're like, oh, this is kind of gimmicky, or this is kind of ridiculous, like sort of like a jumping the shark sort of scenario. But I feel like they used her enough that it wasn't just like a one-off kind of thing. I was glad that she came back in the third act of the episode. Yeah. And I think that however they pulled it off, whether or not the actors were in the same room as her or it was special effects, I think they did a good job at it. And I appreciated that.
That is a much more detailed reason for that Mary. Mine is just that she was cute.
And then it also, I mean, you learned about tigers. You researched tigers.
True. Yes, I did like that.
The respiratory systems of tigers. Mm-hmm. You were not a veterinarian, but you are about 1/100th% closer. 1/100th% closer to becoming a veterinarian than you were prior to this episode. Or a
zoologist, as I wanted to be in 3rd grade. I feel like all 3rd graders are like, I want to be a vet and or a zoologist.
Wait a second. So you're telling me that you not only came up with a modern retelling of Romeo and Juliet, but you also wanted to be a zoologist when you grew up? How you're such a trendsetter. You're groundbreaking, Erin.
Yep, I'm an enigma. I'm a unique woman.
Yeah, so I'm glad that we both liked it. It was a different move, and it was fun, and it was weird, and I think
so like what do you think will be coming up next on Chuck? Like, you think they'll have like a monkey at some point, maybe like a goat? We had snakes and tigers in this episode. Okay, well, I guess that the real truth is that we're gonna have to have lions and bears, because those are the only we got tigers, so we need lions. We had tigers, bears, and oh my.
So what would you like to kill this week, Erin?
Probably that joke. I think that the Africa stuff was weird. And I think that, like, for the reasons I named, like, I feel like they just weren't planning to, like, go to Africa. Like, I feel like it was going to be a thing where Ellie and Devin would come back and be like, wow, we had such a great time in Africa. Here's some stuff that we did. But because they have these extra episodes, we had to see them there. But I just thought that the way that this episode used it, it just felt like I believe the IGN review that I referenced was, or it could have been an AV Club review, but it commented that it felt like they were using the Africa scenes solely to set up this twist at the end. And so what it actually amounted to was like one of the things where we get a lot of like kind of unnecessary, not even unnecessary, but like a lot of more uninteresting scenes that then lead to something interesting, like for a later episode. And so I felt like if they were going to go to Africa, I wanted them to like go all the way and like show some interesting things or like make some interesting points. And it was really just like setting up the fact that this Justin guy was going to be bad. I also thought that they didn't really I don't know. It felt a little bit, I think like Doctors Without Borders is like an admirable concept, but like I feel like looking at it as a modern viewer, it's like a little bit weird to have these like white people coming to save the people of Africa. And like, it's like no one is there. Like, there's not anyone there like in charge of anything. It's just like men with guns and sick people, and like it just felt like a little weird, and they didn't do enough with it for me to feel like good about it. So plot wise and also like politically wise, I thought the Africa stuff could have been better.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because they literally arrive in Africa at the beginning of the episode, and then they leave at the end of the episode.
Yes.
And they don't really flesh it out or anything. And
And all we know about it is that like there's men with guns, they almost get attacked by a snake, and then there's like a ring agent there. Like that's everything. And I feel like if they wanted it to be like well-rounded, it could have been better.
And like Ellie is overwhelmed by it, but Devin seems to be doing an okay job, but he's also concerned because he knows that Ellie's stressed.
Yeah.
And also, you're right. It's kind of watching this in this particular period.
Yeah.
Moment in history, moment in time.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, you know what? This is absolutely the most people of color that have ever been in an episode of Chuck.
Yeah, that's the other like big thing is that like that sucks. Like that it's just like they go to Africa and it's just like men with guns are like the biggest like people of color that we've seen. So yeah.
Just reinforces how white of a program Chuck is.
Yes.
Is definitely a critique to have of it, or a takeaway.
Yep.
Anyhow, my kill was much smaller than that. I just thought that it was kind of annoying, all of the constant references to the parallels between the Turners and Chuck and Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
And like they kept saying like all that separates the two of us is 30 years of experience. You will turn into us within 30 years, like some kind of like Looper kind of scenario when Joseph Gordon-Levitt turns into Bruce Willis. And it's like, we get it. They literally said the 30-year thing maybe like 5 times.
Yeah.
I was like, stop beating us over the head. We get that the characters feel this kind of kinship to these other people.
Yeah.
So I was a little frustrated by that.
That's fair enough. So speaking of frustrations, would you like to go into the scooter scale?
The scooter scale is going to be more of an airing of grievances than a celebration this week. And the scooter scale is how we rate this particular episode on a scale of 0 to 5 corn dogs.
I think this might be my lowest score for this season. You're the one with the graphs, the intricate numbers and statistics, but yep. I am going to give this episode a 3. It's a little higher than I had written down. I was planning to give it a 2.75, but in talking about it, there were plenty of things that I liked about this episode. I thought that it had some highs, especially like with the tiger being well used, and like the weird beginning I liked, but for all the reasons that we've already talked about and what you said, like, yeah, I think that the Turners was a very interesting concept. I think that's kind of funny that like the CIA would bring in another CIA couple, but I don't think it was used for either like their talents as actors for the concept of the Turners in general, or how Chuck and Sarah were reacting to the Turners. I didn't think it was like as interesting as I wanted it to be. I thought that the episode kind of didn't do right by Sarah, where like I think we were trying to like do a metaphor where like Laura was jaded and Sarah is jaded, and like there's kind of like this tension, and like Sarah's a little bit grumpy, and maybe she's kind of dealing with the repercussions of like agreeing to this like quote unquote normal life with Chuck. But I feel like it was just like a little bit not, I don't want to say anticlimactic, but it was just like the setup I felt like was better than the actual payoff. And also what the Turners didn't really make sense. And like, there wasn't really enough of like a, like they escape out of the bathroom, but then like use that escape to come back through the back door and ultimately rescue Chuck and Sarah. So I feel like there wasn't enough of a question of like, if they were actually bad, and like why they actually went bad was kind of weird. So I don't know. I just think like for the talents of like Fred Willard and Swoosie Kurtz, like I would have liked to see them do a little more.
Yeah, they're like, why they were doing what they were doing, their motivation was basically like, yeah, we just wanted to.
Yeah.
Because they're like, why are you doing this? And they're like, well, I don't know. Like, who are you going to sell it to? Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
And that, why are you not doing this anymore? Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of flimsy.
Yeah.
I will match you. I also am giving this episode a 3.
How exciting.
I enjoyed this episode, but once again, it kind of felt sort of light and frivolous compared to some other episodes this season. But overall, I feel like you said, like I kind of was like, I don't love this episode, but I was like, yeah, it was fine.
Yeah.
It was enjoyable enough. I don't think it was the funniest episode or the most action-packed or the most dramatic, but it was pleasant enough.
Yeah.
Got to watch a tiger run around.
That's true.
What else can you ask for?
So I wanted to note this comment from Eric Goldman at IGN. He says, I kept wanting either Morgan, Chuck, or Sarah to at least mention in passing that Morgan actually had beaten Chuck to the punch when it came to betting a beautiful, statuesque super spy. Remember Karina? Morgan should be pretty psyched to know the truth about Karina if he hasn't been told yet. Which is a good point, like, especially that last sentence. Do you think they've told him that Karina is a spy? Does he know now that, like, he's, like, her history? Like, is he even thinking about it? I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I feel like we had discussed when in Chuck versus the Beard, when Chuck is filling in Morgan about all of his spy stories, that probably would have come up. But it doesn't seem like it's something that is at the forefront of Morgan's mind.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's interesting.
Morgan seems to be in the midst of a proverbial dry spell.
Yes.
In terms of dating.
Yeah, but maybe that'll change. Maybe soon it will change.
Maybe someone from his past will return in, like, next week. Who knows? Who can say? Anything can happen. So I think that has been a satisfying jungle tour. I hope that you appreciated our trek through the woods, and I hope that you did not catch malaria. So with that said, my name is Chris Gillespie, reminding you that food is sexy.
And my name is Erin, and I am ready to be sacrificed to the alligators. Throw me in, Chris.
All right, here you go. We're going over to the big alligator pond. All right, Erin, get ready. And push!
Splash! Anything is possible!
And you're done. Well, this is a gruesome way to end this episode, but at least Erin seemed to be really cooperative and on board with it. So if it's what she wants, then I'm happy to see it through. Ooh, they're really going to town. Oh, yikes. Oh, God, I don't know. Oh, I can't. Oh, I'm going to puke. I can't watch this anymore. Thanks for listening. As always, a big thanks to the artist Hadakoa and the fine folks at freemusicarchive.org for providing us with our theme song, Warm Up. If you want to drop us a line, you can reach us at GoChuckYourselfPodcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Go Chuck Yourself on your preferred podcast platform. New episodes come out every Monday morning, and you do not want to miss a new episode. Thanks again. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.